SABC, together with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, bring you the final verdict. In the pursuit of justice, we are all equal before the law. These are some of the stories that have led to the final verdict. Statistics show that in South Africa, 1 in 4 women will become victims of domestic abuse. These women, trapped in a cycle of violence and pushed beyond their limits, sometimes see murder as their only means of escaping these vicious cycles.
Domestic violence is based on the realities and experiences of persons who have been abused. Domestic violence can be in the form of physical abuse, of sexual abuse, of financial abuse, of psychological and verbal abuse, intimidation, stalking, all these provided for in the Domestic Violence Act.
Women possibly struggle to break free from patterns of abuses because they've possibly seen their mothers, their maternal figures in their life, keeping silent when being kept down by abuse. So they think maybe this is the way it's supposed to be. Maybe if I keep quiet, it'll go away. Maybe if I say nothing, he'll stop. Maybe if I stay, he will also stop doing what he's doing. Maybe if I behave myself. And what women don't realize, they're not the problem.
When a woman stays in an abusive relationship and the abuse has been known to get only worse instead of better, the fear is that at some point somebody will die.
Derek, I've been working my ass off just so that we can feed outside.
Let's go. You made the salad.
It's on the counter. I think I'm gonna stay. Got a bit of a headache and my bruise is getting worse.
Is this a joke? How do you think it's gonna look if I go back there without you? Are you trying to make me look stupid?
It's just a braai, Henrik.
It's just a braai, Henrik! Hey! It's just a braai! You're stupid! A 22 and a pissy gun. Typical bloody woman. You know what? On the plus side, that's the first time I've ever seen you hold a gun properly!
This is the case of the state versus Sonia Jansen.
It is not uncommon for people, particularly, unfortunately, women, to find themselves in an abusive relationship. A lot of women think that once married and you are in an abusive relationship, that is your fate.
It's quite difficult for the victims to live an abusive relationship. They move in a cycle of violence and can't get herself out of the situation. It might be easy to a person who's looking at it, out of the relationship. But for them, this is my husband. This is somebody that I love. And he always hopes for a change.
By the time women learn that there is a way out, they are so deep into this abusive relationship, they are so abused that they are no longer empowered to take steps to address their own situation.
After years of abuse, some women take drastic steps to escape these abusive relationships.
We have now an increasing number of cases where women who are subjected to abuse kill their abusive partners. They actually subjectively feel that the death of the abuser is the only way out of the cycle of violence.
When one is in an abusive relationship and commits murder, they cannot rely solely on the fact that this person abused me for years. I had every motive or, every right to kill him. Because you don't. Whatever your situation, unless it's in defense of yourself or your loved ones, you simply don't have the justification to kill another. So the responsibility is always upon you to prove to a court that I had no other way but to do what I did.
On the 6th of January 2011, Sonia Jansen found herself in the East London Magistrates Court on trial for the attempted murder of her husband, Hendrik.
I married Hendrik when I was 18. He was doing his military service. 3 months later, the beating started.
What kind of beatings?
Started with pushing, then punching, choking. Then the kicking started.
Did anyone witness these beatings? Friends? Family?
Everyone. My son, friends, even the neighbors called the police a couple of times. I laid charges, but...
You laid charges, but what, Mrs. Jansen?
What always happened. He threatened to kill me or my family, so I dropped the charges. My son contacted the police once, and Hendrik was locked up for the night, but he was released the following day. Still got the bruises from that one.
What do you think drove Hendrik to be so aggressive?
He was jealous. He hated it if other men even looked at me. And when he drank, it got worse.
How often did he drink?
All the time. He even lost his job because of it.
Your Worship, the defense will go on to substantiate my client's testimony, but for now I want to bring the court's attention to the basis of Mrs. Jansen's testimony. At this moment, we have an innocent woman standing trial for the murder of her abusive, alcoholic, and criminal husband. On top of that, we have the stunning fact that the state has not proved that my client's husband is even dead, as his body disappeared from the ambulance on the night in question. Poof, gone.
According to the official police report, Hendrik's body mysteriously disappeared from the ambulance before it even reached the hospital.
In Sonia's case, that she shot the husband is not denied. When the ambulance took him away, he was alive, he was stabilized. The complication is that en route, he disappeared. The question that can best be asked is whether or not his disappearance after he left the house from the ambulance, whether Sonia had any hand in it.
Did you want to kill him?
Coming up, Sonia's truthfulness was brought into question.
Why did you lie to the police?
Under the guidance of advocate Alistair Jones, Sonia needed to prepare herself for the grueling process of cross-examination.
Did you want to kill him?
Yes.
No, Sonia, you shot him in self-defense. That means you shot him to keep him from harming you.
I know, I'm just so tired. To be honest, I'm relieved. Feels like I can finally breathe again.
Look, I know you're feeling relieved, but you've got to show some remorse at this trial, Sonia. The state is going to look for any little sign of intent or weakness, and they will be ruthless. You've got to be prepared.
When you prepare a client for court, you prepare them to be able to give their side of the story in a coherent fashion and structured fashion. When you coach them, you are putting words in their mouths. They are no longer now giving their story, they are giving your story. And that is not what the case is about. To prepare a client is permissible. To coach a client is not permissible. Once you put words in their mouths and tell them what to say, you've now crossed the line. You are now, through your client, lying to the court.
Now let's start at the top. Why did you lie to the police?
I didn't.
Well, at first you said he shot himself accidentally, and now you're saying you shot him in self-defense. You lied to somebody, Mrs. Janssen.
I said it was an accident. The police thought I meant he shot himself accidentally.
So you shot him accidentally?
No. I shot him because I knew if I didn't put an end to it, he'd eventually kill me.
Where is he now, Mrs. Janssen?
You tell me.
Where did you bury him?
I didn't.
So he just vanished?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Okay, stop. I'm done. I still sleep with the door dead bolted, for God's sake.
If you feel apprehensive about talking to the police, remember you have the constitutional right to remain silent and not be compelled to make any confession that could be used as evidence against you.
People lie to the police for different reasons. So when they are questioned, they try to put it in a different light because they think if they tell the truth and say, I was angry, he had assaulted me, and I thought this is it, no more, and I shot them, that story would sound worse than if they gave what they think is a better story. So Sonia lied, but that in itself is not an indication that she therefore killed her husband or that she is responsible for the missing body.
The state needs to prove Sonia intended to kill her husband even without the body.
Mrs. Janssen, you claim that you originally wanted to scare your husband. Is that true?
Yes.
And that's why you reached for the gun?
I ran for the gun, but yes.
Did that not work?
Don't know what you're asking.
I want to know how you landed up shooting the deceased, if your intention was to merely scare him.
Because he wasn't scared, was he?
So you shot him. Did that scare him?
Your worship.
If I wanted to kill my husband, I would have used the revolver. I used the 22, but that meant nothing to Hendrik. He just went on at me, on and on. I didn't want to kill my husband, Mr. Preem. But if he's dead, I'm glad he's gone.
So you're glad he's gone?
Yes.
The Domestic Violence Act gives victims of domestic abuse the maximum protection of the law. Some people who have experienced domestic abuse over a period of time start to feel powerless and don't leave the situation because they feel trapped. Because of this, the Act provides different types of protection for people who are experiencing domestic abuse. Had Sonia Janssen utilized the protections of the Act before that fateful day that she shot her husband, she may not have found herself facing a criminal charge of murder.
South Africa has got a legislation that is all-embracing. It takes a very wide approach in terms of accommodating or taking in what could constitute domestic violence.
In an abusive relationship, the critical issue is to get out of the relationship. It is not to solve the abuse, because chances are that a woman is unlikely to successfully resolve the abuse.
You can go to the nearest police station where a police officer will advise you on the remedies available, which is either laying a criminal charge or making an application for a protection order. The magistrate will hear both evidence from the complainant and the respondent, and if satisfied that domestic violence did take place, will issue a final protection order. This final protection order is for a lifetime. Attached to the final protection order is a suspended warrant of arrest, which you may use if the respondent breaches the protection order.
By the time Sonia realized she needed the protection order, it was too late.
If the woman is the one who ends up killing her husband, she will have to face a murder charge. The risk is high that the judge might not be persuaded that you had no other option but to kill him.
Your Worship, the state requests a postponement.
On what grounds, Mr. Prim?
Your Worship, despite numerous attempts at getting hold of both the state doctor and liaising with the investigating officer, both have failed to appear in court today.
I'm sorry, Mr. Prim. The state has had more than enough time to ensure that all witnesses are in attendance.
May I speak, Your Worship? My client is from Cape Town, does not have the means to fly back and forth between Cape Town and East London. Should these postponements continue?
Without our expert testimony...
Your case is very thin. I can see that, Mr. Prim, and I'm becoming less and less impressed. You have no body, you have no witnesses, and all you seem to be doing is wasting this court's time. There will be no postponements.
The state has no further witnesses, Your Worship.
Where a party has failed to, or has been unsuccessful in presenting certain evidence, that party must understand that a court will have to make a decision without the evidence of the expert. Failure to properly present expert evidence before a court would have an impact on the case. And in a criminal case, would have an impact on the prosecution's case, because they will not have proven all the issues that they require to prove in order for the judge to arrive at a conclusion that they want.
Coming up, will Magistrate Abrams be able to deliver a final verdict despite the lack of evidence?
In determining whether she did in fact act in self-defense, the test of the reasonable person has a role to play.
There is evidence before the court that Hendrik Janssen jumped out of an ambulance. There is also evidence that the supposed deceased abused his wife and that she acted in self-defense. Did she have another option? I submit she did not. The state has not proved anything with this little stunt, most importantly that her actions were unreasonable under the circumstances. Nor has the case proven that the supposed deceased is even dead. All the state has is a missing person. And the last time I checked, a prerequisite for a murder trial is a dead body.
As we saw in Sonia's case, there was no body. So in the case of a missing body, a question arises, is the person dead? Or are they simply somewhere else? But it is not impossible for a murder conviction in a case where a body is missing. Where there is other sufficient circumstantial evidence to support a conclusion that the person is in all probability dead than alive, then based on this case, a murder conviction can succeed.
The defense has proven that Sonia shot her husband in self-defense. But can she be convicted of murder as there is insufficient evidence that Hendrik is even dead?
In arriving at my judgment today, I would have preferred to make a finding based on the merits of the state's case. Since the body of the presumably deceased Mr. Janssen was never recovered, it would be inconceivable for this court to find beyond a reasonable doubt that Mrs. Janssen is guilty of his murder. Over and above that, this court's decision must be guided by the fact that the defense has shown that Mrs. Jansen acted in genuine self-defense when she murdered her abusive husband. In determining whether she did in fact act in self-defense, the test of the reasonable person has a role to play. Did the accused have any other option at that point in time to end the assault on her bodily integrity? I do not believe she did. In the circumstances, she acted as a reasonable person. The court is of the view that the state did not provide enough evidence to show that the accused acted unreasonably on the fatal day in question. Given the fact that there was insufficient evidence presented on which a reasonable court could convict the accused, I am therefore acquitting the accused, Sonja Jansen, of the charge of murder. Mrs. Jansen, you are free to go.
As long as we are going to have men who think it's okay to beat women, we are always going to have these cases. I think it's a lot to do with education, that it's not okay to beat a woman.
Law provides measures for you to step out of an abusive relationship. It is possible to save your life using the South African legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
That's good. You did right.
Thank you.
In a murder trial, if the accused raises the defense of self-defense, it will only result in an acquittal if the court finds that the accused acted in response to an imminent attack on his or her life. The Domestic Violence Act provides a variety of protections for people who are experiencing domestic abuse, including protection orders and family violence interdicts. The final verdict was brought to you by SABC together with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development.